Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Faith Revisited podcast. I have an interview today, my first solo interview by myself. Normally I have Ben by my side, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Cat Holbert. Her and I got to know each other in 2013, and this episode we're going to talk all about camp. She is the camp expert, and I was a lonely counselor, and we just really hit it off. So I really am excited for you all to meet her. Kat, welcome to Faith Revisited podcast.
Hi, Molly. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So I said we met in 2013. I went to church camp growing up and like pretty much all junior high school. And then 2 years when I was after college, I joined to be a camp counselor at my home site, which is the Lazy W camp. And Kat was hired on as the site director. And I think you started in 2013 there, correct?
I did. And actually, I started as the program director, but swiftly things changed and I became the interim site director and then the director, like within, I think it was like 7 months of starting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's where we met, but you have a very long background of camp ministries, and then now you're the executive director in the Desert Southwest Conference, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so why don't you tell everyone kind of your background, and you are super passionate about camp, and I want to hear all about it.
Okay, Molly, I am originally from Virginia and got my start in camp and retreat ministry way back in the mid 90s. In 94, I was graduating from high school and my mom said, hey, you should go be a camp counselor. And I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Mm-hmm. And I applied at Westview on the James, which is a United Methodist camp in the Central Virginia area, and got the job. And immediately, like within the first week of camp, I fell in love. And I remember I was telling folks, we were doing staff training last week, and I was telling folks about this, that at the end of my first week of camp, we were doing a hayride to where we did this big family presentation thing. And I started crying because I was like, I don't want it to be over. And all my co's who had grown up going there, because I never did overnight camp as a young person. I did day camp a couple of times, but they started laughing at me and they were like, we have 9 weeks of this.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah.
And so I instantly fell in love. And then I started really kind of growing into myself because of my camp experiences. I'm a PK, so long life of going to church and being involved in the church setting, but God hadn't become real to me until I got into the camp community. And really all of a sudden I started understanding what it means to be in a Christian community and what it means to worship with everything we do all the time, and to play in a holy way, to laugh in a holy way. And it was really amazing. And then I had a meeting with the camp director, and that was like super scary because I think that he must have been meeting with everybody for like midsummer reviews or something. I don't know why I was there.
Yeah.
But I know I went into his office and I saw that he had a degree in Parks and Recreation Management. And I was like, you can like study this? I was getting ready to enter my freshman year at VCU.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. And he'd actually gotten his degree from VCU. And I was like, well, that's crazy. And then I thought to myself, like such a teenager, I was like, I'm too intellectual for that. So I fought it for like the next 4 years. I switched my major 6 times. I ended up like stopping going because I was like, I really don't know what I want to do. And then I every summer I'd go back to camp. Every summer I'd go back to Westview. And I knew that at camp was the place where I was the best person I was out of the whole year.
Yeah.
And then I didn't go back one summer. I wasn't in school because I was like farting around. Like, what do I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And of course God was calling me that whole time, but I was like, for the 90s, I was like, talk to the hand.
Yeah, I was about to say that, but it would have aged me too. So, okay, we're good.
So, then I got a job at a pizza restaurant, a gourmet pizza and sub shop, super good.
Nice.
And I was managing that restaurant, but Westview had called me and said that they really needed help for this one particular week of summer where there was like a lot of people taking vacations. So I went back and worked that week. And this was the week the theme of the summer was, I can't remember, but it was, we were working with the scripture about the talents and how some of the characters hid their talent, buried their talents, and they didn't do anything. Some of them went and actually made their talents more. And like God screamed at me, like, I know that the story was about like talents or money, but God screamed at me and was like, you need to be doing what I've gifted you with, and not doing it is a sin. And I was like, okay. I went back that week at camp. I immediately put in my notice. I got back into school and enrolled in Parks and Recreation Management. I was like, okay, fine, you win.
We're doing it. Yeah.
And then everything fell into place. I got a job at working at the YMCA and after school care. Got offered a job as a youth pastor at a really great church in the Richmond area. And then after about a year of that, got offered the job as the director of retreat ministries at Westview on the James. So it was really one of those instances where God put the call on my heart at a very young age, and I ran. And then finally, when I said, okay, God, here I am, God said, okay, bam, all windows open.
Wow.
And yeah, it was pretty very directly cool when it happened too,
Totally. Yeah. And then you spent your whole career doing that now.
Yeah. So
you moved from Virginia out to California.
I did. I spent 7 years at Lazy W Ranch, and I love Lazy W. And in fact, I've been here in the desert Southwest for just a little over a year. I got here in February before COVID, and literally COVID descended and everything changed.
Yeah.
So this will be my first season running camp here in the desert Southwest. But going out to California and meeting the Lazy W community and opening my eyes to a different style of camp, because at Westview, we were more activity driven. We had all the bells and whistles of all of the things. And we were all a paid staff. We had a few volunteers. But at Lazy W Ranch, it was almost all volunteers, almost entirely all volunteers. And we're at Lazy W, we were a lot more, and still are a lot more, like close community driven, less activity driven, more close community driven. And that was something that was really amazing there. And continues to be like that feeling of family. I mean, and Molly, right? Like, and I think, and Westview, I think every camp everywhere has a little component of this, but what Lazy W does particularly well is lives as a place where everyone belongs. Like we'll have the very unusual campers, the ones who are definitely like in school are probably seen as marginalized kiddos that are hanging out with the campers who are definitely probably in the real world really popular or really,
but everyone's brought into the fold.
Everyone, all of them. Yeah. And very, very minimal bullying. Like it's amazing at Lazy. Like, and in fact, like when I started out here, I was hearing about some bullying issues and I was like, what? Like that still exists in the world?
This is so funny because I grew up, I only knew Lazy W, and that was a place where also in elementary school, we'd go on field trips to Lazy W. So that was even before I was a camper there. I was at the place. So I knew the cabin setup, I knew the layout, I knew, because I'd already gone there for field trips. It's nice to hear that what I find so homey about my camp experience is that community that was built. And that's what kept me coming back year after year. And that's when I felt closest to the God all the time. Like that's where it hit home for me every single summer. And it's nice to hear that wasn't just in my head, that place did actually provide that for me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's built on the backs of people like you and people like Scott Wilmoth. I don't know, am I allowed to name people? People like Scott Wilmoth and Michelle Corbett and people who did it all as volunteers for a really long time. And they did an amazing job of building this community where everyone was seen and valued and heard. So when I got there, I got to just continue to cultivate that and grow it. Like I didn't do it on my own. And it was really amazing. And now I'm here in this new place and I have no idea what it's like.
That's
right?
true.
Because
you haven't had a summer yet. Wow.
Yeah. So, and and you probably remember this too, like I've been doing this for a long time, that I did end up getting my degree in Parks and Recreation. And then okay,
you did it.
Not super intellectual, but I did it.
Spent enough time in school. It's all good.
Well, I completed my professional certification in camp and retreat ministry through Drew. So that added a nice little bit of intellectual feeding to my soul. But when I got to Lazy W, like the first year, I just was like, I just want to be a resource and I just want to be what the volunteers and the leaders need. And I would have done very similar here, except for the fact that I have a lost year. And I was like, wow, I don't really have the space to wait a whole nother year now. So I know, and I'm nervous about this. I'm just going on record. I'm nervous that I know that I'm doing things different and I've made changes. And I know breaking traditions is hard, especially when you don't know you're breaking traditions. But I'm excited that I get to be with campers. I'm excited that I get to be with volunteers and staff who love the community. And the main camp that I oversee is Mingus Mountain. So it's right at the top of this mountain called Mingus Mountain, and it's at 7,700 feet. So it's up there. The elevation's real. Never had to really deal with that before. And it's beautiful. Like there's a serenity to it that is unlike anything I experienced at Westview, unlike anything I experienced at Lazy W. It's another way that it showcases that it's its own, that each camp has their own beauty, and I know you're near Epworth by the Sea, which I've had the pleasure of being there a couple of times for national gatherings of United Methodist Camp and Retreat leaders. And that site is stunning because you get the big live oaks with the Spanish moss, and it's so beautiful, and it's right on the water. You get dolphins up and down. I mean, it's just amazing, but it's big. It's big. And I think the summer camp at Epworth is huge compared to what it is at Lazy W or Mingus or even Westview. But it looks incredible. Sorry.
So we've talked about a couple different areas where there are camps. Camp is very important to the United Methodist Church, right? Like this is a very strong thing that, I know my parents' friends grew up going to church camp in the United Methodist Church. So what is it about camp and retreat ministries why is it there? Why does the United Methodist Church believe in it so much? And why has it stood the test of time?
Yeah, that's a great question, Molly. I think I could probably talk about this for like a half an hour. This question alone.
Good.
And then any of my United Methodist Camp and Retreat friends would have extra half an hour of things to share. But I tell you that it starts with the fact that Wesley took preaching outside. Like I think there's a huge component of our epigenic culture that exists because John Wesley took pastoring outdoors. And because he did that, there's a call as United Methodists to connect with our faith through nature. And camp is where that comes to life just naturally, So I think that's I think that component is a big piece of why United Methodist camping is so important. Like our founder saw how valuable being outdoors was. Like that's where things were at ease for him. So there's that. And then also I think that particularly why oh gosh, why camp is so important to us as Methodists beyond that is a little bit of grace and the grace that comes with the camp experience and how connected we are to grace as United Methodists, and that if there's one place in this world that we live into graceful living, it's at camp. It's where we're quick to forgive.
Yep.
And we're quick to see the joy in each other. And it's at camp where campers break down maybe some of those barriers that keep them from connecting in their faith in a way that they can't do at church. And it's not that church can't do that, but it's that there's just something special about dislocating from church or home and relocating at camp in a new spot that makes it possible. In 2019 at Lazy W, we had a really particularly amazing experience where we had a whole kind of little group of campers in our senior high camp, but one of them particularly who was like, I'm here because my parents thought this was a good idea, but I'm an atheist and I want y'all to know.
Yeah.
And everyone was like,
senior high. Yeah.
Yeah, totally is. So, and everybody had done such a great job of still incorporating and welcoming her. Like, hey, it's okay. You still belong. Like, our big message is that everyone belongs there, right here. Everyone belongs in camp. So even if you feel that way, you still belong with us. And nobody pushed her. Nobody was like, well, you're a bad person because of that or anything like that. Yeah. We just kept including her. And then we were in worship, and I think it was How He Loves that was playing. Yeah, of course, right? Right. And she runs up to me at the end of the song and she says, I didn't get it, but now I get it. I now I know, and I believe in God, and I'm so glad I'm here. And like, I'm going to cry thinking about it.
Oh, I'm trying.
Because it was amazing to me, because she had that transformational experience right there, almost right in front of me. She went from before that worship service being like, nah, I'm an atheist, but you Christians are okay, I guess.
Yeah, it's not for me.
Right. To then, because of that song, because of that moment, because of the people around her, because of what we had offered in the camp community, the Holy Spirit washed over her. Yeah. And she was changed and forever altered because of that space and that time. And that's why camp is important. And our founders in United Methodist camping across conferences understood that that happened and happens and will continue to happen.
It does every summer.
Yeah. And little ways too, like little guys might show up and, be scared to be away from home, but by the end of the week realize they could do it, So it's not just those big Holy Spirit moments, it's those teeny tiny Holy Spirit moments too.
Yeah, absolutely. So going off some of that, what do you think some of the best parts about camp are for both being a leader at camp? Because I'm hoping, some of potential listeners may be interested in volunteering their time or their, services or donations or that kind of stuff, or as a camper, sending your kids to camp. What are some of the best parts of that?
Well, in my opinion, it's all the best part, right? Even the painful,
not good part.
Yeah. There's no not good parts. Even the painful parts, like the homesick parts, or the campers that are having a hard time adjusting, or the staff that are having a hard time doing problem solving with one another, or conflict resolution. Even those are good because of what comes from it. But I'd say, as far as the day-to-day goes, hands down, the best part of camp is almost always going to be our campfire experiences, and I know that that's kind of it might sound trite, but it's just so incredible. To hear campers sing together, to watch them all throw their arms around each other, to do the camper sway. Yeah. Even though elementary ministry campers who do that. And you're like,
Mhm.
oh, they're just really able to drop some of the fronting that
Yeah.
they do during the day or do at home or at
Mhm.
school.
And it's the wind down, I think, with that, it's the end of the day, you're kind of reflecting over everything that has happened and what you learned that day, and it's kind of gone over again, and the singing, and it's just a way to like really solidify it again in your mind, with the quiet and the peacefulness and the not distractions of daylight and people goofing off and that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, especially when we have a really killer night sky, that just brings it all together.
Yeah.
I do think that there's also, especially for, well, I was going to say for the younger kids, but I think it's really for everybody, that there's a skill building that happens at camp that turns into growth. And it's like a growth of all sorts, like self-esteem grows and discipleship grows and leadership grows. And I think that is so potent and powerful that you can't discount that. And it happens on all sorts of ways. It happens because campers get brave enough to go lead a prayer, or a camper learns how to swim at the pool, or a camper has an aha moment when we're doing, some Bible study or reflection. And so the best moment as a staff person, whether you're volunteer or paid, is when you see a camper have that moment, or when you get to help facilitate that. Probably for campers, especially if they're younger, they're going to say that the best moments are the fun moments. And the moments where they get to really, and they might not be able to articulate this, but to really be themselves without moms or dads around to make sure that they're being themselves the way that they want them to be themselves. And not because parents are doing anything bad. It's just that at camp, there's typically young adults who are responsible for them. So the campers get to kind of try on different types of personalities and get to maybe lean into who God is actually calling them to be. And without the pressure of like, oh, but I'm the smart one, or I'm the funny one, or I'm the athletic one. They just get to experience what it's like to just be that person that God is actually got that little seed growing in.
And I think it's equally as beneficial for the counselors. And so does not everywhere have all volunteer staff, or really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, never mind. But I mean, for us, so I came from basically an all volunteer staff, and that's how I grew up as a camper and then as a counselor. And for us, the learning and developing of the materials, so there was always a set theme for the week, but we got to come up with the day's tasks, and you had your day team, and you put together what was going on that day, and the lessons, and how you're going to tie it in here, and what's a creative way to get this point across. And it makes you relearn your faith as well. Plus, seeing it through the eyes of someone you're teaching, it's just, I think it's equally as beneficial for counselors than it is for campers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you that Lazy W is very particular in the way that it engaged its volunteers in the creation or the development of the curriculum, which is one of the unique pieces of the Dubs. At Westview, it was all paid staff, and the curriculum was there. A pastor took care of it. We just came in and led activities, but our faith still grew because we were still walking campers through what that material was. We were still doing nighttime vespers with them, which are like cabin reflections. We were still leading them in worship. We were still leading them, period. So even if it wasn't quite as intense as it was at Lazy W, it was still there and happening. And Mingus is kind of a blend. Mingus has it has the volunteer model, but the way it has worked here is that the deans, and now we're calling them spiritual directors, they plan it all of those pieces, and then counselor staff show up and they like they learn it for a day for pre-camp and then they hop in. So I've added some components of Lazy W here and some components of Westview. And so the counselor interns who are paid, who I've been training this last week, they're going to really grow in their leadership. But then there still will be opportunities for the volunteers to engage and grow as well. And you just do, because it's impossible for you to spend a week disconnected from your real life, teaching a bunch of young people how to be in Christian community and not come away changed.
Absolutely.
Like that's going to happen.
Yeah. And you're part of a lot of like national organization committees and planning groups, and you've kind of had your hand in a lot over the years of different groups. I know this past year's kind of was a wash. I'm sure everyone had it canceled, but are there other trends you're seeing? Are the same amount of people going to camp or more people? What's kind of the feel about it overall?
Yeah, Molly, the unfortunate truth is that COVID really kicked camp in the knees.
Yeah.
And before that, we were seeing already a trend of not as many campers going to camp. And I think that is a reflection on the fact that there's not as many United Methodists in United Methodist Church. And so what's happening is for conferences and camps that have really heavily relied on that United Methodist Church to camp connection in order to populate their beds and their spaces, there's been a decline, and that is that camps are closing because of it, and that's such a major bummer. I'm always sad whenever I hear about a camp closing. But and COVID did too. There was a couple of camps that I knew of that they decided to close, and I don't know if they'll ever open again. We'll see. I do think that, and I'm not the expert on this, and I know you've had other people on that can probably speak to it better than me, but I do believe that what we need to be doing as camps in general is reaching, including our United Methodist Church. Of course, I would never want to leave who we are as United Methodists, but really reaching beyond, and like, let's get kids involved at camp that maybe aren't involved at a church. And then let's explore ways to then connect them back to their local United Methodist Church. So like, because we're 2 hours from Phoenix. Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the US. Why don't we serve kids who aren't going to some church somewhere, and then help see where they could connect to churches in the Valley? And certainly the same thing could happen in Georgia or all over the country. Anywhere. Yeah, because these children and youth really need what we have to offer. But if we wait for the churches to be the ones to connect us, then I think that we're making a mistake. We need to go get the kids and then try to connect them back to the churches. I like to think that this is a Richard Rohr. He's a Franciscan father. He says that he's on the inside of the outside edge of the church. And I kind of feel like camp does the same thing, where we're like this parachurch organization where we get to kind of do things in a different way than maybe happens in the church setting. We kind of get to be a little ridiculous. We get to spend this, 6 days in a row of intense time with our campers. So we get to do some things that the church just isn't in a place to. And because we're on the inside of the outside edge, we're maybe a little bit more accessible, especially for folks who have misgivings about the church for whatever reason, like that we're a place where people can come to encounter the gospel without it being like hooked to maybe some negative emotions or opinions they have about it.
Or in the walls of a church that are closed, sometimes very closed-minded, and also intimidating, hymnals and choir robes, and not everyone's used to that, or they've been turned off from that. So what a great middle ground to come and reintroduce yourself, or for the kids to be introduced for the very first time. it's a side door. Ben and I talk about that a lot on the podcast. Like, how do we open these side doors for people that may not just walk through the front door? So
yep. It's definitely a side door. So then what I'd want to do, Molly, is work with you to be like, well, how do we reach to your community around your area? You know, and how do we get those kids to my camp? Then how do I connect those kids back to you and Ben at your church?
I love that. So what do you think for anyone listening or anyone who's going to talk to someone about this, because they're going to reminisce about their camp experience, what are things that we can be doing as general members of a church, or are there things, providing resources would be one, time? What are things that across the country, no matter where you're at, there's usually a church plugged in with your district, or a camp plugged in with your district, right?
Or if there's not, there is a camp that is connected in some way. And of course, being a United Methodist camp leader, I would tell you, look for your United Methodist camps that are in the area. And you can do that really easy. You can go to the United Methodist Camp and Retreat Ministries Association. That's UMCRM or UMCRM website.
Okay.
And you can find out what camps are nearby. And then call those camps, find out what it is that they're offer, or look at their websites or whatever their online presence is. Some camps are really, really diligent about maintaining an online, Facebook, Instagram. Some are not as much, because it does kind of fly in the face of who we are, but we have to do it. So it's kind of a weird thing. But look, find out if you love camp, or if you think camp might be something you're into, find out what camps are around you and then connect with them. Any camp director anywhere is going to be like, oh, you want to come and volunteer? You want to bring a work crew out and fix buildings or do grounds maintenance? But also they're going to be looking for volunteers. We're seeing, and this is across the nation, there is an incredible shortage of staff and camps everywhere, not just United Methodist camps, but camps everywhere this summer. There are very few that have been able to find the staff that they need to serve the campers that they want to serve. So if you have the time banked and you can take it away, consider volunteering, and also consider, making a monetary gift to your camps, because a lot of camps got hit really, really hard last year, and are looking for ways to maximize their funding and their resources as much as they can. So if anyone has the capacity to do that, I highly encourage them to. And then to be engaged and get involved. Tell campers, your friends, your neighbors, anybody who has children between the ages of 7 and 18, go to camp, have a camp experience, talk about it. Even younger, if your camps have camps for younger ages. But camps a lot of times, especially nonprofit camps, rely on word of mouth, because we just don't have the budget to soak the marketing system with lots of ads and things. But word of mouth is where it's at, and we need folks like you, Molly, who love camp, to tell others about camp, so they know that this exists, that this is something that's there for them. I think one of the number one things that probably camp folks hear all over the place is what a hidden gem our camp is, and we're like, oh, we don't want it to be a hidden gem. We don't want it
to be hidden. Yeah. Okay. So everyone listening and everyone that's going to hear this, your charge is to talk about camp with someone. So obviously we would love for you to donate your time and resources. I think you should try and find out, and I'll put the link to the website in our show notes, and you'll see it in the description here, so you can go locate your own local camp. But talk about camp. Tell someone who has kids around that age, or start at least locate where one is in your area if you don't know, and just kind of keep that top of mind and talk about it. This has been such a great conversation. I love the camp experience. I am the number one fan. I think it was the greatest thing, that my best memories growing up, my closest to God I've ever felt has been in the mountains at Lazy W camp. And to be able to do that as a counselor, and my little brother also was a counselor for more years than I was, after he went through the entire system from the very beginning, elementary, all the way up. And this has just been such a great experience. So I really appreciate you for talking with me about this.
Molly, it's been so great and so good to see you. And I know we only got to work together for a very short amount of time, but I just thought you were the coolest from the beginning.
You're so
I'm
sweet.
glad you thought of me. Yeah.
You're so sweet. I have 3 rapid fire questions before we go.
Okay.
These are 2 that we ask everyone and then 1 that I picked out personally for you. So rapid fire question number 1 is, what's your favorite vacation spot?
Paris.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
What job would you have if you weren't doing this?
FBI agent.
Like it. And then I know you're a huge dog lover. What's your favorite dog breed?
Oh, it has to be Labrador all the way. I love the big goofy labs. 100%.
Yes. Thank you so much for spending your evening with me. And I hope all you Faith Revisited listeners listen to what Cat had to say and just talk about camp. Find out which one's in your area and see what you can do to get involved. Get a group of people together, maybe do a work day. There are a lot of opportunities that you mentioned. So I hope our listeners go and do that.
Thanks a lot, Molly. Thanks for having me.